What happens when a hospital administrator bans an elderly carpenter's handmade crosses from the gift shop, not knowing the profound meaning behind them, and what unfolds when Keanu Reeves, visiting the hospital, discovers the heartbreaking truth that connects these simple wooden creations to countless children battling cancer. This true story of faith, craftsmanship, and unexpected friendship will touch your heart and remind you that sometimes the most powerful symbols of hope come from the most humble hands. Before we begin, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love seeing our community come together from around the world. The rain fell in gentle sheets against the large windows of Mercy Children's Hospital, creating a soothing rhythm that seemed to soften the clinical atmosphere inside. Located in the heart of Portland, the hospital stood as a beacon of hope for families facing their darkest hours. Its walls, painted in cheerful colors and adorned with children's artwork, did their best to mask the gravity of the battles being fought within. In the small gift shop on the first floor, 85-year-old Gerald Hoffman carefully arranged a box of handcrafted wooden crosses on the display counter. Each cross, lovingly carved from different woods, cherry, maple, oak, walnut, caught the light differently, showcasing the natural grain and the careful craftsmanship that had gone into its creation. Gerald stood tall despite his years, his back straight from decades of disciplined work as a master carpenter. His hands, though now spotted with age and slightly trembling, still maintained the remarkable precision that had made him renowned in his profession. Today, he wore his usual outfit, a plaid flannel shirt, pressed khaki pants and suspenders, topped with a faded blue baseball cap that read, "World's Best Grandpa," a gift from his granddaughter Sarah 12 years ago. "These are even more beautiful than the last batch, Gerald," said Patty Williams, the gift shop manager, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who had been running the shop for over 15 years. She picked up one of the crosses, admiring the smooth finish and perfect proportions. "I don't know how you do it." Gerald smiled, a genuine warmth lighting his weathered face. "When you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work," he replied, his voice carrying the gentle rasp of age. "Besides, knowing where the money goes makes every minute worthwhile." For the past 7 years, Gerald had been donating his handcrafted crosses to the hospital gift shop. All proceeds from their sales went directly to the children's cancer ward, the same ward where his granddaughter Sarah had spent 2 years of her young life battling leukemia. She had survived, now a thriving college sophomore studying to become a pediatric oncologist, but the experience had transformed Gerald's retirement years into a mission of gratitude. "Sold 3 just yesterday," Patty continued, reaching beneath the counter for her sales ledger. "That family from Idaho took one. Said they wanted something to remind them of the care their son received here." Gerald nodded, understanding completely. His crosses weren't just religious symbols. They had become tokens of hope, physical reminders that even in the sterile environment of hospital rooms, something handmade and heartfelt could exist. "How many does that make this month?" he asked, though he kept his own careful records at home. 27, Patty answered proudly. "That's almost $400 for the ward." Gerald's creations weren't inexpensive, each sold for around $50, but their quality and the cause they supported made them the gift shop's most reliable seller. Parents bought them for strength during their children's treatments. Families purchased them as thank you gifts for doctors and nurses. Staff members acquired them as meaningful presents for colleagues. Even people with no religious affiliation were drawn to their beauty and the story behind them. As Gerald and Patty chatted, neither noticed the woman who had entered the gift shop. Dr. Victoria Winters, the hospital's newly appointed administrator, stood observing the exchange with cool professionalism. At 42, Dr. Winters had built an impressive career in healthcare management by implementing efficiency-focused reforms and strict policy adherence. With her perfectly tailored navy suit and sleek bob haircut, she embodied corporate healthcare leadership. "Ms. Williams," she finally said, stepping forward. "I need a word." Patty straightened immediately, recognizing her new boss. "Dr. Winters, good morning. Have you met Gerald Hoffman? He's been supporting our cancer ward for years with his beautiful craft work." Gerald extended his hand, offering a friendly smile. "Pleasure to meet you, Doctor. I've heard good things about the new leadership." Dr. Winters gave his hand a brief professional shake, but her attention remained fixed on the display of crosses. "Mr. Hoffman, your craftsmanship is certainly impressive," she said, her tone measured. "However, I'm afraid we need to discuss the appropriateness of these items in our hospital environment." The warmth in Gerald's eyes dimmed slightly. "I'm not sure I understand." "As part of our new inclusive care initiative, we're implementing a policy regarding religious symbols in hospital-managed spaces," Dr. Winters explained clinically. "While we respect all faiths, we're moving toward a completely neutral environment to ensure all families feel equally welcome." Patty's eyes widened. "But Dr. Winters, Gerald's crosses have been a staple here for years. They're our best-selling items. And they've directly funded over $60,000 in equipment for the cancer ward," Gerald added quietly. Dr. Winters maintained her composed expression. "The fundraising aspect is commendable, Mr. Hoffman. Perhaps you could consider crafting other items? Neutral symbols like hearts, stars, or inspirational plaques would better align with our new policy." Gerald's weathered hands resting on the counter tightened slightly. "These crosses aren't just religious symbols to me, Doctor. They're connected to my granddaughter's journey here, to the prayers that helped our family through the darkest times." "I understand personal attachments," Dr. Winters replied, though her tone suggested limited patience for emotional appeals. "But as a medical institution serving a diverse population, we must prioritize inclusivity. The policy will take effect next Monday. After that, we can only accept non-religious items for sale." With a curt nod, she turned and left the gift shop, leaving behind a heavy silence. Patty reached across the counter to touch Gerald's arm. "I'm so sorry, Gerald. Maybe we can talk to her again, explain the history." "It's all right," Gerald interrupted gently, though the disappointment was evident in his voice. "She's doing what she thinks is best for the hospital." He began carefully returning the crosses to his wooden carrying case, his movements deliberate and respectful, as though handling precious artifacts. Patty watched helplessly, knowing how much this volunteer work meant to him. Not just the craftsmanship, but the connection it maintained to the place that had saved his granddaughter's life. "Will you make something else instead?" she asked hopefully. Gerald paused, considering the question as he closed the latches on his case. "I don't know, Patty. These crosses, they're special. They're not just wood and glue." He lifted the case from the counter. "I'll think about it." As Gerald left the gift shop, he moved slowly through the hospital corridors, nodding greetings to staff members who had come to know him over the years. Outside the cancer ward, he paused, looking through the glass doors at the colorful playroom where young patients were engaged in activities with volunteers and child life specialists. 7 years ago, Sarah had spent countless hours in that room, finding moments of joy and normalcy amidst endless treatments. During those darkest days, Gerald had started carving small wooden crosses at her bedside, something to keep his hands busy and his mind focused while she slept through chemo sessions. What had begun as a coping mechanism had evolved into something more meaningful when other parents started asking if they could buy one. With a heavy sigh, Gerald continued toward the hospital exit. As he approached the main doors, he noticed increased activity. Security personnel speaking into radios, nurses whispering excitedly to one another. Curious, he slowed his pace. "He's coming to visit the kids in the cancer ward," one volunteer explained to another. "They're keeping it low-key to avoid disruption." "Who's coming?" Gerald asked the volunteer, a young woman he recognized from previous visits. "Keanu Reeves," she whispered, eyes bright with excitement. He does these visits sometimes completely under the radar. No media, no publicity. Just him and the kids. Gerald nodded appreciatively. He'd heard stories about the actor's quiet philanthropy, how he funded children's hospitals without putting his name on buildings, how he took time for ordinary people, without seeking recognition. As Gerald pushed through the revolving door into the rainy afternoon, he spotted a black SUV pulling up to the hospital entrance. He paused beneath the covered walkway, watching as a tall figure in jeans and a simple dark jacket emerged from the vehicle, carrying several bags that appeared to contain gifts. Though the man wore a baseball cap pulled low, there was no mistaking Keanu Reeves's distinctive profile. Gerald stood respectfully to the side as the actor approached, not wanting to intrude on his privacy. But as they passed one another, the wooden case Gerald carried slipped from his grip, falling to the ground with a clatter. The latch sprung open, and several wooden crosses spilled onto the wet pavement. "Let me help you with that," Keanu said immediately, kneeling down to gather the scattered items before they could be damaged by rain. As he carefully collected each cross, he paused, noticing the exceptional craftsmanship. "These are beautiful," he said, genuine admiration in his voice as he handed them back to Gerald. "Thank you," Gerald replied, somewhat flustered by the celebrity encounter. "Just a hobby of mine." Keanu studied the older man thoughtfully. "Doesn't look like just a hobby to me," he observed, helping Gerald secure the case. "That's master craftsmanship." Gerald smiled modestly. "Been working with wood for over 60 years. Started as an apprentice when I was 15. They might have parted ways then, the elderly carpenter and the famous actor, each continuing on their separate paths. But as Gerald reached to take the last cross from Keanu's hands, the actor noticed something unusual. "There's a small compartment here," Keanu said, his fingers discovering the nearly invisible seam in the wood. Gerald nodded, a melancholy smile crossing his face. "That's their special feature. Each one has a different message inside, a different story." Curious, Keanu carefully opened the tiny compartment and removed a small rolled piece of paper. With Gerald's permissive nod, he unrolled it and read aloud, "Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. For Emma, who taught us all how to be brave." Emma was 7, Gerald explained softly. Fought neuroblastoma for 3 years. Never complained once, according to her parents. They bought that cross the day she finished her last treatment. Understanding dawned in Keanu's eyes as he looked from the cross to the hospital behind them. "You make these for the families here?" "Used to," Gerald corrected, his disappointment returning. "New administrator just banned them from the gift shop, says religious symbols don't fit with their inclusive policy." Keanu's brow furrowed slightly. "But they're more than religious symbols, aren't they?" Gerald appreciated the perception. "Each one carries a different message, a different story of courage. My granddaughter survived leukemia here 7 years ago. Making these crosses was how I kept my sanity during her treatment. Now I make them to give back." For a moment, the two men stood in silence, the rain creating a private atmosphere around their conversation. Despite their vastly different worlds, there was a mutual recognition. Two people who understood the value of quiet acts of meaning. "Would you mind showing me another one?" Keanu asked finally. Gerald opened his case again and selected a cross made from rich walnut. He demonstrated how to open the hidden compartment, from which Keanu extracted another small message. "The darkness taught me to appreciate the light. In memory of David, who shined brighter than any star." "David was one of the first children I made these for," Gerald explained. "He didn't make it, but his parents said this message helped them through their grief." Keanu was silent for a moment, holding the cross with evident respect. "How many of these have you made?" "Over 1,000 through the years," Gerald replied. "Each one with a different message. Some celebrate recovery, others honor memory. Some offer strength for the journey ahead." Keanu returned the cross carefully to the case. "I'm here to visit the kids in the cancer ward," he said. "Would you mind if I bought some of these to give them, the ones with hopeful messages about courage and strength?" Gerald's eyes brightened. "I'd be honored, but—" He hesitated, glancing back at the hospital. "I don't want to cause trouble with the new policy." "Let me worry about that," Keanu said with quiet confidence. "How many do you have with you?" "Just these 12, Gerald answered. "The last batch before the ban." "I'll take them all," Keanu decided, reaching for his wallet. "Name your price." Gerald shook his head. "No charge for this purpose. It would be my privilege to know they're going directly to the children." Keanu considered this, then nodded with understanding. "Then let me make a donation to the cancer ward in your name instead." As they finalized their arrangement, Gerald hesitated, then shared a thought. "Mr. Reeves, there's something special about the cross I think people sometimes forget. Yes, it's a religious symbol, but at its heart, it's also a universal one. It represents endurance through suffering, the idea that pain has meaning, that sacrifice leads to redemption. For children fighting cancer, that message transcends any particular faith." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "I think you're right. And these aren't just symbols. They're vessels for individual stories." He carefully placed the crosses in one of his gift bags. "Thank you, Mr. Hoffman." Gerald Hoffman. "Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. I have a feeling these will mean a lot to the kids." They parted ways, Gerald heading toward the parking garage with his empty case, Keanu proceeding into the hospital with his gifts, now including the handcrafted crosses. An hour later, as Gerald started his old pickup truck, his phone rang. It was Patty from the gift shop. "Gerald, you won't believe what's happening," she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "Keanu Reeves is upstairs giving out your crosses to the kids. The stories he's telling about them. The parents are in tears. The staff, too." Gerald smiled, picturing the scene. "I ran into him outside. Good man." "That's not all," Patty continued. "Dr. Winters went up to stop it, because of the new policy. But when she got there—" Patty paused for dramatic effect. "Gerald, she found out that one of your crosses helped her colleague's son through brain cancer treatment last year. The message inside about finding strength in your darkest hour became their family mantra. She's been completely blindsided by how much these crosses mean to people here." "Well," Gerald said thoughtfully, "sometimes we need to be reminded that policies are meant to serve people, not the other way around." "You should come back," Patty urged. "I think things are about to change." Gerald considered the invitation, then nodded to himself. "I'll be right there." When Gerald returned to the hospital, the atmosphere had noticeably shifted. Staff members greeted him with unusual warmth, some even stopping to thank him personally. Confused but intrigued, he made his way to the pediatric cancer ward. As the elevator doors opened on the 5th floor, Gerald was met with an unexpected sight. In the ward's common area, a small crowd had gathered, nurses, doctors, parents, and children well enough to be out of their rooms. At the center stood Keanu Reeves, engaged in animated conversation with a young bald girl who held one of Gerald's crosses in her hand. Dr. Winters stood nearby, her professional composure somewhat diminished, a thoughtful expression on her face as she watched the interactions. When she spotted Gerald, she approached him directly. "Mr. Hoffman," she said, her clinical tone softened. "I believe I owe you an apology." Gerald shook his head. "No need for that, doctor. You were doing what you thought best." "I was implementing a policy without understanding its human impact," she corrected herself. "That was my mistake." She gestured toward the gathering. "I've spent the last hour listening to families tell me what your crosses have meant to them, how they've provided comfort during unimaginable challenges." Before Gerald could respond, they were joined by a woman in her 40s who introduced herself as Dr. Chen, head of pediatric oncology. "Mr. Hoffman, I can't believe we've never formally met," she said warmly. "Your work has been supporting my department for years. That specialized imaging equipment we acquired last year, funded largely by your crosses." As they spoke, Keanu approached with the young girl, who was about 9 years old, her medical port visible beneath her colorful hospital gown. "Lily wanted to meet the man who made her special cross," Keanu explained, his hand gently resting on the girl's shoulder. Lily held up the maple cross Gerald had crafted. "Mine says, 'Stars can't shine without darkness.' My mom used to say that to me before she died. How did you know?" Gerald knelt down to Lily's level, his knees protesting but his heart full. "I didn't know, sweetheart, but sometimes the right message finds the right person." Lily nodded solemnly, accepting this answer with the peculiar wisdom of children who have faced adult-sized challenges. "I'm going to keep it forever," she declared. As Lily returned to her mother waiting nearby, Keanu addressed the small gathering. "I came here today to bring some small happiness to these brave kids. Instead, I've been given a lesson in how meaning can be found in unexpected places." He looked at Gerald with genuine respect. "Mr. Hoffman doesn't just create beautiful objects, he creates vessels for hope, for memory, for courage." Dr. Winters stepped forward. "Which is why I'm revising our policy," she announced. "The gift shop will continue to carry Mr. Hoffman's crosses, and will expand to include meaningful symbols from other traditions as well. True inclusivity means making room for all expressions of hope and faith, not eliminating them." The small crowd applauded, and Gerald found himself momentarily overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events. When he regained his composure, he discovered Keanu at his side. "Would you give me a tour of your workshop sometime?" the actor asked quietly. "I'd like to learn more about how you create these." Gerald was surprised by the request. "My workshop's nothing special, just a converted garage at my home. The most meaningful things often happen in simple places," Keanu observed. 2 days later, Gerald was tidying his workshop when a black SUV pulled into his driveway. True to his word, Keanu had come to see where the crosses were made, bringing along not only his genuine interest, but also an unexpected proposal. As Gerald guided him through the modest space, showing him the different woods, the specialized tools, and the careful process of creating the hidden compartments, Keanu asked thoughtful questions that revealed his own appreciation for craftsmanship. "My grandfather was a cabinet maker," Keanu explained, running his fingers over a partly finished piece. "I spent summers with him as a child, learning the basics. Never had his talent, but I gained a deep respect for the work." Gerald demonstrated how he selected messages for each cross, drawing from a collection of quotes, poems, and personal reflections he had gathered over the years. "I try to create a range, some offering strength, others comfort, some celebrating life, others honoring memory. You never know what someone might need to hear." As they shared coffee at Gerald's kitchen table afterward, Keanu presented his idea. "I've been thinking about what you said regarding the universal meaning of endurance through suffering. There are children facing similar battles in hospitals everywhere, not just in Portland." Gerald nodded, unsure where the conversation was heading. "I have a foundation that supports children's hospitals," Keanu continued. "What if we created a program that could bring your crosses, and similar meaningful items from various traditions, to more children? A workshop where young people could learn craftsmanship while creating symbols of hope." Gerald set down his coffee cup, considering the proposal. "You mean, teach others to make these?" "Not just to make them, but to understand the meaning behind them," Keanu clarified. "To appreciate the value of creating something by hand that carries deeper significance, and not just crosses, symbols meaningful to different faiths and cultures. Stars of David, Buddhist prayer wheels, Islamic geometric patterns, indigenous symbols." The vision expanded as they talked, a program that would employ veterans, seniors, and at-risk youth to learn traditional craftsmanship while creating meaningful symbols for children in hospitals. Each piece would maintain the special feature of Gerald's crosses, a hidden compartment containing a message of hope. "We could call it vessels of hope," Gerald suggested, warming to the idea, "because that's what they are, containers for messages that matter." Keanu nodded, appreciating the name. "Would you be willing to serve as master craftsman, to teach others your techniques?" Gerald thought about Sarah, now thriving in college, about Emma and David and Lily and countless other children who had held his crosses during their darkest hours. "It would be my honor," he said simply. 6 months later, the first Vessels of Hope workshop opened in a renovated warehouse near Gerald's home. The space combined traditional woodworking equipment with modern design tools, allowing artisans to create meaningful symbols from various traditions with the same careful craftsmanship Gerald had perfected. 5 veterans, 3 seniors, and 7 young people from challenging backgrounds formed the initial team, each bringing their own experiences to the work. Gerald, now with the title of Master Craftsman, moved between workstations, sharing technical knowledge while emphasizing the deeper purpose behind their creations. What made the program unique was its spiritual diversity. A local rabbi helped design Jewish symbols, an imam consulted on Islamic patterns, a Buddhist monk advised on meaningful Eastern traditions, and indigenous artists shared their cultural symbols. Each tradition was respected, each symbol created with the same attention to detail, each containing space for messages of hope. For the grand opening, Dr. Winters, who had become one of the program's strongest advocates, brought a group from Mercy Children's Hospital. Among them was Lily, now in remission, proudly showing everyone the cross that had accompanied her through treatment. Keanu attended without fanfare, preferring to stand in the background as Gerald led the tour. But his quiet presence was a reminder of how a chance encounter in the rain had created ripples of positive change. The most moving moment came when Sarah, Gerald's granddaughter, now a third-year medical student, unveiled the program's first international shipment, boxes of handcrafted symbols bound for children's hospitals in 5 countries. "My grandfather taught me that healing involves more than medicine," she told the gathered audience. "During my own cancer journey, I watched him transform his fear into creativity, his helplessness into purpose. The cross he made me still sits on my desk at school, reminding me daily that compassion is as important as clinical skill." As the event concluded, Gerald found himself standing with Keanu in a quiet corner of the workshop. "Did you ever imagine your workshop would grow into this?" Keanu asked, gesturing to the bustling space where people of different ages, backgrounds, and faiths worked together. Gerald shook his head, watching as a teenage apprentice carefully sanded a wooden Star of David. "I was just trying to keep my hands busy while my granddaughter fought for her life. Just trying to make meaning out of helplessness." "That's often how the most meaningful things begin," Keanu observed, "not with grand plans, but with small acts of purpose during difficult times." 1 year later, Vessels of Hope had expanded to 3 cities, with plans for international workshops underway. The program had delivered over 10,000 handcrafted symbols to children's hospitals worldwide, each containing a personal message of hope, courage, or comfort. At Mercy Children's Hospital, the gift shop now featured a special display case showcasing items from all faith traditions, created by artisans who had learned their craft from Gerald. Dr. Winters, now one of the program's board members, frequently shared how her perspective had been transformed by understanding the human impact of seemingly abstract policies. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, much like the rainy day when their paths had first crossed, Gerald and Keanu met again at the hospital. This time, they were there for a special occasion, the dedication of a small meditation garden where families could find moments of peace during difficult treatment journeys. In the center of the garden stood a simple sculpture, hands of different ages and sizes, carved from various woods, all reaching upward together. Within each hand rested a small symbol, a cross, a star, a crescent, a feather, a wheel, each containing messages of hope from children who had completed their treatments. As families and staff gathered for the dedication, a journalist approached Keanu, asking what had inspired his involvement in the project. With characteristic humility, he redirected the attention. "This isn't my story to tell," he said, gesturing to Gerald, who stood nearby helping a young patient open the hidden compartment in a wooden star. "It's about an elderly craftsman who refused to see his work as just objects, who understood that sometimes the most powerful healing comes in the form of something you can hold in your hand when the journey gets difficult." Later, as they walked through the garden together, Gerald shared news with Keanu. "Sarah's been accepted for her residency here. She'll be working in the same ward where she was once a patient." "The circle completes," Keanu observed with a smile. Gerald nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden cross, different from the others he had made. "I wanted you to have this," he said, placing it in Keanu's hand. "It's made from the wood of my very first workbench, the one my father built for me when I was a boy." Keanu accepted the gift with evident reverence, finding and opening the hidden compartment to read the message inside. "To the man who saw value in an old carpenter's work, when others saw only problems. Some angels wear leather jackets. Gerald." Keanu smiled, touched by the sentiment. "I'm no angel, Gerald." "Maybe not," the old craftsman replied with a knowing look. "But you understood something important that day in the rain. You understood that meaning isn't determined by policy or authority. It's created in the space between human hearts, in the stories we tell, the objects we cherish, the hope we cultivate even in our darkest hours." As they stood in the peaceful garden, surrounded by symbols of diverse faiths united by common hope, the simple wooden cross passed between them represented something greater than either man had intended when their paths crossed. A reminder that sometimes the most profound changes begin not with grand gestures but with a moment of genuine seeing, of recognizing the meaning that others have overlooked. And in hospitals around the world, children fighting their toughest battles continued to discover hidden messages in beautiful handcrafted vessels, words that seemed mysteriously meant just for them, proof that even in their most isolated moments, they were connected to a larger story of courage, endurance, and hope that transcended any single tradition while honoring them all. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Share in the comments what symbols or objects have brought you comfort during difficult times. Remember, sometimes the smallest things can carry the most profound meaning.